Even if you don't want to keep on getting drunk, they make you despair. Like you're sitting somewhere in your house or in the street, and out of nowhere, you feel like, I don't know, this image comes to your mind, and you feel like going to a place where people are getting drunk. They are calling you with witchcraft. They despair you. They want to make you feel despaired. So I didn't know it until I get back to Guatemala. So yeah, I know it's with witchcraft or black magic because they showed me in Tijuana that there are people who use witchcraft or Santeria to make people have alcoholic and drug problems. I even come across with Mexicans in the supermarket in Guatemala, and sometimes in the next aisle, they start talking about how, for example, they just found out some products more expensive than usual. They say they do that because they got bored, but I think it's because I haven't taught this yet, which is why they say that they got bored. Sometimes they install some informal sales on the streets, or I find out some of them at any place I go, even when crossing the passarella from one side of the street to another. Sometimes they laugh as if they were crazy just to make you feel bad. Sometimes they stand or sit beside you because they know they look physically to a neighbor, a friend, or a relative of yours, and started doing strange things. It is strange you can find posts of people who are supposedly missing and that allegedly have not been found in Mexico, but they know everything of someone who arrived undocumented to Mexico. They even know where he lives in his country of origin as well, where to find him before he reaches the place he is going to. I also should mention that years before, I didn't realize that some people who used to work for the red buses in Guatemala City in Zone 7 were actually Mexicans. They keep on sending messages. Right now they sent a message. Me volvieron a mandar un mensaje. Siempre que me pongo a grabar, mandan mensajes. Every time I'm recording, they send messages. I also should mention that SMS messages, that's what I was saying. They sent another SMS message. I also should mention that years before, I didn't realize that some people who used to work for the red buses in Guatemala City and Zone 7 were actually Mexicans. I talk about this because some of them used to behave as if they knew who I am. I could sense it from some of them that they also had some kind of witchcraft done on them so that I'd feel sexual attraction to them just to make it. I don't know if by being a transport company they could make it look like they could get American visa, or as they let me know with attitudes that by having a company would have even an opinion if I should go from Guatemala and be petitioned. That's what I managed to understand from hints and attitudes people have given to me. I don't know how reliable it is, which at this point looks like it is true that those who they try to get US papers to, they want to get rid of their family, but they didn't say who wanted to do it. If Mexicans or Guatemalans by trying not to let you finish your studies or getting work experience. Not even a couple. Seems like that is the reason they tried to make me ineligible to get US papers, and I remember I heard this in my grandma's funeral. they were going to get rid of us one by one, and they didn't want my relatives in the US to return to Guatemala. Yes, to return to Guatemala. Well, seems like my cousin has diabetes, my little sister has diabetes, I have diabetes, my brother has diabetes, my aunt in California, she has diabetes. Bueno, resulta que mi primo tiene diabetes, yo tengo diabetes, mi hermano tiene diabetes, mi hermana pequeña tiene diabetes, mi tía en California tiene diabetes. Estaba leyendo la parte donde digo en la versión en español que se tratan de deshacer uno por uno de a quienes le obtienen papeles americanos. Eso lo vi en el momento. Eso lo vi en el funeral de mi abuela. Y que no quieren que mis familiares que están en Estados Unidos regresen a Guatemala. So my grandma gets sick out of nowhere and got a high fever, and then she died. There are also Mexicans because their ethnicity is not noticeable, who claim to have HIV. Met one who claimed to be from San Raimundo, Guatemala City. San Raimundo, Saint Raymond, translated into English, who also claimed to have HIV to prevent you from working. If you have urinary infections, they make you take a PDRL test, syphilis test, and then say you have a half a point PDRL, which they would use to prove you have HIV at their convenience, like trying to stop you to talk about the reality that they are a disease that they cause with witchcraft, but nobody talks about it. That crossing illegally the Rio Grande River, crossing the desert, it's a lie because there are drones hovering around at noon in the evening in Rio Bravo or Rio Grande in the desert. Even trying to jump the border wall is a lie. They had a sponsor and they entered the US with an American visa. There was a responsibility later signed by the sponsor. So how come they try to deport you? And if you know you cannot renew your documents, the best thing would be going back to your country. So I have to say it in Spanish. Hubo alguien que fuera patrocinador. Bueno, estoy hablando de las enfermedades del VIH, de la sífilis, que esas las pueden causar con brujería, pero nadie habla de eso. Hay enfermedades que las pueden causar con brujería y nadie habla de eso. Y lo usan a su conveniencia para tratar de hacerte no hablar de lo que estoy hablando ahorita, de las enfermedades, ni tampoco de cruzar ilegalmente la frontera, porque cruzar el desierto y cruzar el río Bravo es una gran mentira. Al atardecer sueltan drones, saltar el muro fronterizo también es una mentira. La gente que está en Estados Unidos llegó con visa americana y hubo un patrocinador que firmó una carta de responsabilidad por esa persona para lo que pueda precisar. Entonces, sabiendo que no pudieran renovar esos papeles, lo mejor sería regresarse a su país. Porque igual, aunque uno esté indocumentado en Estados Unidos, no le permiten a uno obtener trabajo. La gente está organizada para eso. como los mexicanos que mostré ahorita en los audios que llegaron a sentarse donde yo estaba. O sea, ellos están organizados, saben dónde está uno y qué anda haciendo. So, the best thing if you cannot renew your documents is going back to your country, because if you stay undocumented in the U.S., they don't let you get a job. They are organized, just like the Mexicans you heard they sit beside me. They know where you are, just like that. So, going back to what I was reading. I remember the doctor who told me that I didn't seem Guatemalan. They do it because of the American papers you might have, because why else would he say that? I don't know what kind of witchcraft they did to make you sleepy the day you have money to go to take the test for the health card, as if you'd taken something to sleep. That's why they say things like that about this disease to make it hard for you to get a job. They even use witchcraft to make you sleepy, so you didn't go to take the health card exams, because that's what they ask for. They ask for, and it's like they are requesting. They request the exams of syphilis, VDRL, and blood test in order for you to get the health card here in Guatemala. So most of the companies they ask for this health card here in Guatemala, and they also do this so that you don't learn any job. There are also many gay men who insist on having sex or use witchcraft to try to have sex with you, so they can create you a reputation for being promiscuous when they tell you you might have a sexual transmission disease. They would say it was to be expected because you are very promiscuous. They do that so that you don't learn a job. If your relatives gave you American papers, you would easily earn your dollars. Often you can even find Mexicans in that type of job in Guatemala. It seems to be the people who want to leave Guatemala and the Mexicans who come to Guatemala, and even those who appear to have lived in the United States and are playing games with a relative of Guatemalan migrants to prevent them from being petitioned. They sometimes pretend to be relatives of migrants who take advantage of another migrant in situations similar to those I described in this audio, trying to take advantage of not having to go through the death of relatives like the first migrants. That's why they don't say anything about what happens to no one as a relative of migrants, because they want to be the ones with papers and negotiate the American visas they could get for other people. Supposedly, the reason they made me leave Guatemala was so I could talk about everything that's really happening on the Mexico-US border, despite everything that happened that I already mentioned in this audio. But I know that nobody does anything for free. I know that they would easily try to use me with the excuse of getting American papers so they could leave Guatemala. Okay. Could leave Guatemala. That's why even as they made me understand it once without asking, they wanted me to pay for sex. Furthermore, after having papers, whatever happens That would be a situation I would have to deal with. It's why there are people who have communication or work for job houses around my neighborhood. In conclusion, it's a favor I never asked for, and I don't plan on accepting it, even though they wanted to force me to leave Guatemala because after they are messing with me. Mexicans or neighbors appear and they give me to understand that I should leave Guatemala so they can give me American papers because in the game they got me into, according to what they told me in Tijuana when they made threats of death to me. There are others who want to get them into the same game so they can get American papers too. They're asking Americans for Mexican visas because they are trying to hide or conceal the fact that when they said the migrant caravans were arriving, even if you arrive on your own without looking for any problems and as a refugee, they made threats of death to me in Tijuana. They told me all my personal information, everything I said and did until I arrived to Tijuana. They even knew my social media usernames and passwords, even though I changed one password. They told me what it meant, even though I didn't create that password in English or Spanish. They made me listen at the Tijuana airport as they supposedly killed my relatives. After that happened, the war between Russia and Ukraine began. I remember that when I went to ask for refugee in Comar, Comar, there were two guys who seemed to be Mexican speaking something that sounded like Russian or some Celtic language. I think they implied something like this was going to happen in addition to the relationship between Russia and Mexico, but it seems to be because of the Mexico-US border. That's why they faked that war, and then came the name change of the meta domain and the artificial intelligence to hide the fact that they even make you hear how your family members are supposedly being killed. Yeah, something else I realized after having diabetes is like the name Mark Zuckerberg, which would be Zuckerberg, mountain of sugar, and the domain meta, like metformin. It's a pill you take to control the glucose when you have diabetes. Entonces, algo más que también quería decir es de que Facebook y WhatsApp cambiaron al dominio de Meta cuando regresé a Guatemala. Luego de tener diabetes hace más de 8 meses, pues me di cuenta, Mark Zuckerberg, que significa monte de azúcar, y el dominio Meta, como metformina o metformina. No creo que sea una casualidad. I don't think it's a casualty. So a coincidence. I remember that for the death threats in Tijuana, in the WhatsApp groups, there were people from Argentina who shared photos and videos of themselves, videos of people being murdered. I wonder why only Americans are being asked for visas to enter Mexico, but Mexico doesn't want to regularize those who live in Mexico for Guatemala with biometric data. Besides, why do they say they are sending so many National Guard soldiers if the Rio Grande crossing is a big lie? You end up in the back of a neighborhood where I don't know if the sheriff calls, if they call the sheriff, but the sheriff stops you and asks you if you have American papers to be in the United States when you didn't have them. If you didn't have them, he calls the Border Patrol, and the Border Patrol takes your biometric data and releases you across the international bridge. It can't be that they come to bother you in your own country for the possibility of being petitioned and don't say anything about it. But if you speak up about things related to the Mexico-US border, they come to bother you or you work in your home country because they don't want you to do well for speaking the truth about the border. They want you to stay quiet while they bother you. Okay, I still have some time, so I'm gonna finish talking about this thing happening at the Mexico-US border in my neighborhood. Even though only a few people from certain neighborhoods around the area I live in Zone 7, Guatemala City, they were trying to make me leave Guatemala so they could help those I didn't mention leave Guatemala or even try to get a US visa by working in a call center. I remember back in 2012 when I was working as a security guard around Zone 7 in a residential neighborhood. During Christmas, they offered me food, and one of the neighbors told me, "Now you are going to let us in." There was a problem with an ID the neighbor should have while entering the residential. Since I returned to Guatemala, it has been kind of difficult to me to get a job or any different job. It's what this neighbor from the residential was trying to say. When I got the severance from one call center, the secretary who gave me the severance check said something like that. I haven't had all the lost benefits from jobs I got when I returned to Guatemala. What she really meant was that they were gonna make me leave Guatemala, and when I returned to Guatemala, according to the game they have with immigration, I should let them go to the US. A little girl told me that without talking to her, but you gotta let it go. That's what that little girl told me. As I stated before, no one is holding them back, and if they want to leave Guatemala, they can go. But they should leave and go through everything they put me through before, during, and returning to Guatemala. That's the only way they can leave. When I tried to cross the street, happened twice that people on motorcycles wouldn't let me cross. I don't know if it was because I didn't mention neighborhood Amparo 1, AMPARO 1, like 1, 2, like shelter in English, or granizo, GRANI, said, oh, like sleep. But I didn't mention them because what they could have done was get the other neighborhoods to try to intimidate me into leaving Guatemala again, and then they would try to help them to go to the United States. For example, in the other neighborhoods, there were people who acted as if they were planning something, even trying to intimidate me when they made me leave Guatemala. I had to tell all of those because they are messing with me with things that don't concern them, and they still get mad because I'm not doing what they want me to do. So that's all for the recording, and I just have to say, lately, like last week, I'm feeling like everything is okay. like nothing happened. I don't know what witchcraft they are doing to me, and I'm struggling to remember some things about the neighborhood. But when it comes to, uh, let's say, sexual memories, I remember everything. Entonces, I'm not lying, I'm not playing jokes, it's the truth. Entonces, lo único que tengo que decir es de que desde la semana pasada me siento como que todo está bien. No sé qué brujería me están haciendo, pero tengo problemas para recordar algunas cosas de... Me cuesta un poquito recordar las cosas en la frontera, pero cosas como, por ejemplo, de los recuerdos de sexo, de eso no tengo problemas para recordar. Por eso sé que es brujería. That's why I know it's witchcraft.